The word spin-off generally raises a few eyebrows when a fandom hears about a new entry to their already established world. It seems that many think that they're pretty unnecessary, as why not just continue with the main cast and story rather than focusing on a side one. With Railgun, I can safely say it's the perfect example of why spin-offs are actually needed. For those who have watched A Certain Magical Index, you get far more characterization for characters such as Misaka and Shirai, but also a much deeper look into the world of science and espers. And for those who are new to the franchise, you get a really well put together and satisfying anime that takes you on an interesting journey of science, crime, and school hijinks without ever needing you to actually have seen A Certain Magical Index. Railgun is set in Academy City, the place where technology is 30 years more advanced than pretty much everywhere else, and a majority of its students are espers honing their abilities at various institutions. The main cast you follow over the 2 seasons is composed of Misaka, codenamed the Railgun, who is one of the few level 5 espers in the city who is an electricity manipulator who can pull off moves like literally making a railgun by firing objects such as coins at her enemies. You have Shirai, a level 4 teleporter, with what most would consider as an unhealthy obsession with her roommate Misaka. She's a member of what's known as Judgment, this student-based disciplinary committee that is tasked with everyday problems like helping someone locate what they've lost, to taking down some bad guys who are up to no good. You have Ueharu, who is also a member of Judgment, who I'd say is kind of like the brains of the bunch, and though isn't as physically capable of those like say Shirai and Misaka, she really is a key asset when it comes to Judgment and just how operations have any real chance at success. And lastly, we have Satin, the level 0, who surprisingly didn't feel useless, but rather that kind of character to help keep everyone grounded and provided a sense of normality in this seemingly crazy city. What I absolutely adore about Railgun is how well it manages to find a style that works for this world and sticks to it. While Index did benefit from jumping around styles and themes at times, I often wanted a more grounded style for the story's presentation, which I believe Railgun nailed. The series is built into many small story arcs, either focusing on self-contained crime-like stories where the team has to take down some bad esper in the city, or it's more slice-of-life downtime with the gang. But each of the 2 seasons, there's this very clear overarching plot that comes to a brilliant conclusion by the end. Season 1 dealt with this poltergeist that slowly creeps up over the season and uses past arcs that the viewer will have expected to be one-and-done deals, but actually served as the setup for the main story of that season. It builds up to this fascinating conspiracy that by the time the arc wraps up, it actually moved me on an emotional level because I'd come to love these characters in it so much, and the solution for this arc is exactly what I was hoping for. With season 2, it's a lot less focused on downtime and jumps straight into the Sisters arc, which deals with this cloning conspiracy that the best way you can describe it is hell with how messed up it actually is, with the whole goal being to progress science even further than it already is, no matter the cost, which seems to be the antagonist of each season's drive. And for those who have seen Index, you've witnessed this arc from one perspective, but this season makes a good arc from Index into a phenomenal one in Railgun due to the extra detail we get to experience, due to it now being told from Misaka's perspective. And if you can only watch one season of Railgun, watch season 2 because it's absolutely brilliant. What truly makes both seasons so enjoyable isn't just that the narrative is a lot tighter, fleshing out things in a well-paced manner, but rather the characters we focus on are all developed and actually feel important, and no one is really more needed than the other. Though I liked Misaka in A Certain Magical Index, in fact her relationship with Toma was one of my favorites in that show. I honestly didn't think she was the best character I'd seen in quite a while because Toma would always be the one to save her, and it often felt like she was just this generic love interest rather than her own person. With Railgun, since one can argue it's her story since her name is in the title after all, we have time to actually see her develop and actually feel a lot more human than just the girl who gets flustered around the boy she likes. Since the 4 main leads are all students, it makes sense that their life isn't just crime fighting, but they'll goof off, they'll have their own problems, and they'll grow like a normal group of friends naturally would. All the downtime and more slice-of-life scenes primarily seen in the first season really lets this group naturally build into a lovable group of friends rather than a group of colleagues, which easily could have happened. With Misaka, she's one of the strongest espers in the whole city, and one of my favorite moments is when Satin and Ueharu first meet her. Their thought is she will be stuck up and just think that she's better than everyone else. But actually it's the exact opposite. She's just a normal girl in everyday life who seems pretty sweet and loving overall, not letting her title ever go to her head. This little moment helps establish Misaka to the viewer as someone more than just the legendary Railgun title that people and probably the viewer watching would want to give her at first glance, but rather she's a normal everyday girl when you break it all down. And these everyday interactions between her and the others really let the characters flourish. Aspects like Misaka's obsession with children-based toys and clothing helps give her this small quirk which really helps you believe she's an actual person and you got to know her as one, not as the main character by the time you leave season 2. These little details like what characters obsess over is the small details normal people naturally have built into them. Satin is a phenomenal example on how to make a character mean something, as most would expect her to be a filler character. She has no abilities as far as the viewer can tell, yet she has one of the best arcs in the entire show. Naturally being surrounded by those stronger than you, and when it comes time to fight and you have nothing to contribute past moral support, that naturally should eat away at most people, which for her, that indeed happens. How they explore her own self-doubt and what she's willing to risk to gain power was able to outshine characters like Misaka at times, who I thought would get all the development and spotlight in this show. Rarely in anime such as Railgun do I come out appreciating characters like Satan because the author rarely develops them to have any real meaning to the show. And sure, maybe Satan is just moral support that points everyone in the proper direction at times, then at others she wants to break the law for her own gain, but the fact that you actually see growth and development for her makes Satan someone worth paying attention to even if she isn't all that powerful. Having one of the four main leads be grounded to normality, but striving to be like her friends help give this sense of balance that a show like this desperately needs. Then you have Shirai that, like Misaka, I wasn't overly impressed with but enjoyed in Index, though I always loved her ability as it was pretty awesome to see how she teleports objects to take down other people. My impressions on her before watching Railgun was she was cliche and just there to have sexual fanservice scenes where she would grope Misaka for no real reason. And though she definitely does this in Railgun, more so in season 1 than season 2, she actually came out being one of my favorite characters in the franchise by the end of the second season. Her personality is fun, overly hyper, but also clingy. But as you learn more and more about her and how much she truly cares for Misaka, ignoring her overly possessive nature, at the end of the day, she really cares about her, and it's quite noticeable during the Sisters arc. She clearly has her own goals in life and feels like she tries her best to progress towards them, especially seen when you witness her and Ueharu's small backstory when they first joined Judgment, and Misaka acts as both her goal and main support on her quest. I can't say I'm impressed with how much she gropes Misaka or how much Satan flips Ueharu's skirt, but if I ignore those areas to the show, I feel like the characters such as Shirai and Satan actually flesh out and become a person from a starting point I thought was destined to fail. Shirai really does try to improve herself, and she truly loves Misaka and wants the best for her, while feeling like someone that the law desperately needs, as she really does give it her all. Ueharu didn't have an arc that actually blew me away like, say, Satan. I did really enjoy her character and how she responded to most situations. One of the shining examples is in the first season when she gets this new roommate, and as the main plot of the season is unfolding, people start questioning this new girl. But she gets quite upset at the thought of her friends turning on this new girl who she considers a friend, and it really pisses her off, which up to that point she was always positive and really hopeful. Ueharu managed to be this character that naturally cares for everyone, who doesn't just want to hurt someone for self-gain. The kind of person that if she learned someone she loved was doing the wrong thing, she'd try to figure out why, rather than just stop them then and there, because she sees the good in people when others can't, and often that was needed because the others would always just want to act like simple judgment officers, and without Ueharu holding them down, then the wrong people would have been punished. Mixed together with a keen eye for observing details that others can't see, she ends up being this moral compass with some serious skills over at Judgment when it comes to tracking people down. The best thing that Railgun has going for it is its characters. Season 1 made me really care for characters outside its main cast, and they actually emotionally grip me. Season 2 had me conflicted with how far people should go for the sake of progressing science and who is truly to blame, the one carrying out the orders or the one giving them. The main cast all felt like people, especially in slice of life scenes, mixed together with this tightly contained crime-like story that manages to build a world of science that I absolutely adored. Since all the abilities we focus on are on the science side of things, you get to see a lot more detail to characters like Misaka and how her abilities work, like sticking to walls using magnetism, or how she can bend the sand to act like a chainsaw, or even how Accelerator uses vectors to be a badass. Everything about Railgun feels solid, as if the author took his experience from Index and fleshed out all the areas that needed to be improved while also adding in a few new ideas. The best part of Index ended up being the main focus in Railgun. There's a lot of fan service, there are some pretty tropey designs from character introductions to just general personalities, and though this isn't some 10 out of 10 masterpiece, for the most part what it tried to be, it succeeded at. An anime that wanted to have a strong cast of characters surrounded by really interesting conspiracies and a fun power system. Really, Railgun is an anime I'd recommend to a lot of people, as it's simply great and a memorable anime experience. Railgun is a series that, like Index, is pretty consistent all around. It rarely dips from standard shots, always keeping characters well detailed, backgrounds feeling full of life, and animation is smooth with action scenes looking pretty impressive. Both seasons 1 and 2 of Railgun I think are a bit more impressive due to two key factors, the first being lighting and the second being facial reactions. Lighting wise, I noticed much more care and attention to detail put into how scenes were lit, from bright scenes really focusing on areas like shadows to just how characters were presented in the light to help them pop out, to how darker scenes would set the mood exceptionally well. Index had solid lighting all around, but with this series I noticed it a lot more, where at multiple points in both seasons, I would pause the episode to just take in the gorgeous visual directing with how characters would blend in with the world and how a scene would be lit, with facial reactions being a lot more expressive and able to convey much more emotion than its counterpart anime. Comedy-wise, the anime for both Index and Railgun managed to make you laugh just based on how a character's face looked, but with Railgun I noticed much more emphasis put into emotions like sorrow, to even the face of those clearly worried with how eyes and lips would move in very subtle, yet noticeable noticeable ways, almost like making you feel like it's an actor giving a performance, not a drawing. Good detail to areas like posture, to how faces will change in simple yet effective ways, is how you can sell a scene going for an emotional pull, as long as the writing matches up with this area of visual directing. And honestly, I found myself caring for more characters than in Index due to how often I felt I knew a character and what they were feeling, which kept me invested in nearly every single arc. Since the writing tried a lot harder this time around, I'm glad to see that the detail to the characters' reactions were also increased alongside it. And since our main character this time is Misaka the Railgun, who uses electricity, I found the action to be a lot more exciting as well, because seeing a girl use these devastating attacks where the animation had to always be impressive whenever she used her abilities versus a man who touches things to negate them is just more pleasing for the eyes. I also found the action sequences to be a bit more creative as well, since with Railgun we focus on the science side of things. It makes for everyone's abilities to relate to science in some way, so the technicalities of how things are happening becomes much more engaging than just someone using a mystical ability with little reason given. All the action scenes ended up feeling better planned, because when it comes to espers, they have to be grounded in reality, but also be fictional. Characters like Misaka with her electricity and Accelerator with his vectors are the best examples to explain this. Over the weeks of watching the world of Academy City unfold, I've experienced the series in both Japanese and English dubs, flipping between the two around the halfway points for each season of both Index and Railgun. Though once I did reach season 2 of Railgun, I did stick with the English for the remainder of my binge because it's really well done. I do like both dubs, and I think most of the characters are fairly equal in terms of how the actors deliver lines. Even characters like Shirai, who generally I find only Japanese actors can nail that persona, at least well, I actually thought Alice and Victorian really proved me wrong and delivered that overly tropey, clingy, but badass character quite flawlessly. With the style of anime that Railgun is, watching it in my native tongue just adds to the enjoyment tenfold, since this dub isn't making me roll my eyes at overly forced delivery of lines, like in other anime. All the characters have memorable voices, and honestly, most felt genuine without any major character feeling fake. Characters such as Misaka or Satan just felt perfect in English because the way they deliver their lines came across as if it was just someone naturally talking, goofing off, or being serious. And the same can be said for their Japanese cast. It's great when you have an anime that both the English and Japanese dubs are so equal you don't have to direct anyone to go into any one area, but rather take your pick. Because if you watch from the beginning to end in Japanese or in English, you really aren't missing out either way. The soundtrack, like in Index, is chock full of electronic pieces that matches the world of Academy City very well. When I see characters firing blasts of electricity or someone teleporting around as she kicks some ass, it just feels right to have music that keeps you excited as you watch these scenes play out. Though I did notice much more piano and acoustic based tracks pop up every so often, generally when the mood wasn't so balls to the walls insane, which was a nice touch to help convey the characters' emotions alongside the voice actors delivering memorable speeches. This is an anime that I have really few problems with. The fan service is still obnoxious at times. The series does rely on overly tropey designs, from simplistic scenes revolving around characters like Misaka and Shirai, or even Satan and Uiharu, but the grounded crime-driven story revolving around this group of friends and the cases that they solve was constantly interesting and exciting. The general slice of life scenes help remind the viewer that these were still kids and not everything is serious for them all the time, and the characterization was strong all around, even for antagonists for the series. I wouldn't call it a masterpiece, but rather a great experience that stays on the correct path more often than it doesn't. For the type of anime that it was trying to be, it succeeded at delivering a compelling alternative outlook on Academy City. I award A Certain Scientific Railgun my seal of approval, and though it is the same rating that I gave to Index, I did enjoy this one a whole lot more, just due to how much the individual characters actually mattered here and developed. And if you only have time for one adventure in the city, Railgun is the one that I recommend the most. But that's all for this video. Let me know your thoughts on Railgun or the review down in that comment section below. Remember to leave a like if you did enjoy, and also subscribe to the channel if you happen to be new. As well, there's always my Patreon to directly help fund the channel if you want to go the extra mile. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.